The finger twitch was not an accident, it was a signal. In the absolute pressurized darkness of Arthur's basement, the furniture began to communicate in the only language they had left: the microscopic vibrations of failing muscles. The midnight symphony Sarah felt it first through the floorboards, a rhythmic, dull, thrumming thump. It was the man who had been turned into the floor lamp. His nervous system, ravaged by years of lead and resin, was misfiring. But it wasn't a seizure. It was a countdown. Beside her, the coat rack, a woman whose arms had been snapped and reset into hooks, gave a wet, rattling wheeze. Arthur had missed a pocket of infection in her shoulder. The rot was softening the resin. It was the first time in 2 years she could feel the weight of her own bones. The softening the basement was damp. Arthur's obsession with shine had blinded him to the reality of biological decay. The limestone walls sweated, and that moisture was seeping into the seams of the side table that used to be Sarah. She felt the adhesive on her eyelids begin to turn gummy. With an agonizing, slow pull, she forced her left eye open a fraction of a millimeter. The room was bathed in the sickly green glow of a security light. She saw the floor lamp. His skin was no longer mahogany. It was grey and sloughing off in wet ribbons. His eyes, once glazed over with amber, were wide and bloodshot. He was looking directly at the basement door. The intruder, the heavy oak door at the top of the stairs, creaked. Arthur was coming back. He didn't turn on the lights. He liked to walk among them in the dark, feeling the textures of his sculptures to ensure they weren't dehydrating my beautiful things, he whispered, his footsteps heavy on the stone. The air is too humid tonight. We must apply a fresh coat of sealant. He walked past the coat rack. He reached out to touch the floor lamp's arm. The lamp didn't scream. He couldn't. Instead, he simply collapsed. The structural rods Arthur had driven into his shins snapped under the weight of the rot. The lampshade shattered against the floor. The collapse Arthur gasped, reaching down to grab the sculpture. No, 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 my masterpiece. As he knelt, his back turned to the side table, Sarah felt the brass clock on her spine slide off. It hit the floor with a heavy clack. Arthur froze. He turned his head slowly. In the dim green light, he saw Sarah's eye, the one that was open. It wasn't the eye of a piece of furniture. It was a wet, living thing full of a hatred so pure it felt like heat. You're waking up, Arthur whispered, his voice trembling not with fear, but with disappointment. The revenge of the still he reached for his scalpel to fix her, but he didn't see the coat rack leaning behind him. The rot had progressed further than he knew. The woman's arms, once rigid hooks, swung down with the dead weight of a pendulum. The heavy, resin-coated hand of the coat rack struck Arthur across the temple. He fell against Sarah's back. Now they were all touching. The lamp, the coat rack, the table, and the creator. Sarah couldn't move her arms, but she could feel the paralytic wearing off in her jaw. She opened her mouth. It sounded like tearing wet paper as the sealant on her lips gave way. She didn't scream. She didn't call for help. She leaned her head back, sinking her teeth into the soft meat of Arthur's throat. The silence returns. Arthur tried to pull away, but he was pinned. The floor lamp had fallen across his legs, 300 pounds of lead and bone holding him to the floor. The coat rack had slumped over his chest. They weren't fighting him. They were simply falling on him. In the dark, the only sound was the wet, rhythmic gulping as Sarah drank. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was part of the room now, and the room was hungry. When the sun rose the next morning, the house was silent again. But if you stood in the foyer, you could hear the ticking of a brass clock. It wasn't on the table anymore. It was muffled, ticking away inside Arthur's chest cavity, where Sarah had tucked it before the resin finally hardened for the last time.